Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to break down a really simple but incredibly powerful idea that completely changed modern factories. And honestly, it can change how you think about efficiency in your own life. It's all about eliminating waste and creating a smooth, predictable flow in just about any process you can imagine. Okay, so let's just dive right in with this quote. It's from Taiji Ono, who's basically the architect of the whole Toyota production system. And it sounds completely backward, right? The harder you work, the more money you lose? But he meant it. He told this story about visiting a factory where workers were just buried under a mountain of parts they had produced. He said it was like they built a prison for themselves. All that hard work wasn't creating value. It was just creating this huge, costly problem. And that gets to the absolute heart of a massive and often invisible issue in any kind of work: waste.
And this brings us right to our first key concept. It's a Japanese term that is absolutely central to this whole philosophy: muda.
So, muda is the enemy of efficiency. Simple as that. Look, in any process, there are really only two types of activities. You're either adding value or you're not. And the entire goal of the system is to relentlessly hunt down and eliminate those non-value adding activities. To really get a handle on it, the Toyota production system breaks this waste down into a few distinct types. And here is the absolute key takeaway. Being busy is not the same thing as being productive. Just look at this list. Overproduction, making things just in case, is often seen as the absolute worst kind of waste because it causes all the others, like having way too much inventory or having to move it all around. But even something that sounds small, like unnecessary motion, just walking across a workshop to grab a tool, that's muda. Getting rid of these things is the very first step toward building a better system. So eliminating waste isn't just about ticking things off a list. It's a completely new way of thinking. And that leads us to the philosophy known as Kaizen. Kaizen isn't about some massive one-time overhaul. It's a culture. It's about making small, continuous, incremental improvements every single day by everyone in the organization. The focus isn't just on fixing the machines or the process. It's about developing the people into problem solvers who can see and eliminate waste themselves. And they do it with a very, very clear goal in mind. And this table just illustrates it perfectly. These are the three pillars every business is chasing. Now, conventional thinking says you have to pick two, right? You want high quality and fast delivery? Well, that's going to cost you. You want it cheap and fast? Your quality is probably going to suffer. The Kaizen philosophy just flips that whole idea on its head and says, no, you can and you must achieve all three at the same time: the highest quality, the lowest cost, and the shortest delivery time. So how do you achieve that perfect balance of QCD? Well, the system needed a core principle to guide every single action. And that principle is all about creating a smooth, continuous flow of value. You might have heard of it as just-in-time. Just-in-time means nothing gets made, nothing gets moved, nothing gets ordered before it's actually needed. This was a huge departure from the old model of batch and queue, where you just make a giant pile of something and let it sit in a line waiting for the next step. Instead, the goal is a seamless, one-piece flow from one step to the next, timed perfectly to meet what the customer actually wants. But how do you actually control that flow? How do you make that happen in the real world? Well, making it work required flipping the traditional manufacturing model completely on its head. This is the huge difference between what's called a push and a pull system. A push system is all about forecasting, basically guessing what customers might want and then pushing it through the system. And that almost always leads to overproduction and tons of wasted inventory. A pull system, on the other hand, only makes what's actually been requested. The process downstream pulls the work from the process upstream, but only when it has the capacity and the actual need. A really simple analogy makes this crystal clear. A pull system works just like your local supermarket. The shelves are only restocked after a customer takes something. Your purchase acts as a signal to pull a replacement from the storeroom. It's a simple, visual, and totally demand-driven system. So a pull system is elegant, it's demand-driven, but you can imagine, without a really strict rule to manage it, the whole thing could just fall into chaos. And this brings us right to the core of what we're talking about today. This brings up a super critical question. If you're constantly pulling new items to the front of the line, what happens to the stuff that was already there? How do you stop older stock from getting buried in the back, where it can expire or become obsolete or just get damaged? And the answer is so simple, it's actually brilliant. First in, first out, or FIFO. It is exactly what it sounds like. Whatever goes in first must come out first. No exceptions, no reaching to the back of the shelf to grab the newer one. This rule is the hidden engine that makes a pull system run so smoothly. It guarantees that your inventory is rotated properly, which is obviously critical for things like food, but it's just as important for preventing any kind of stock from becoming obsolete. It completely eliminates a huge source of potential waste, and, most importantly, it creates that predictable, orderly flow that the entire system is built on. So you can see, FIFO isn't just some boring rule for a stockroom. It's actually part of a much larger philosophy of hands-on, continuous improvement that's grounded in the real world. This whole philosophy is captured in what's called the 5 golden rules of Gemba, and Gemba just means the actual place where work gets done. And check out rule number 1. When a problem happens, you don't call a meeting in some conference room. You go to the spot. You check the actual objects involved. You solve problems based on what you can see with your own eyes, not based on some theory. Ultimately, this is about so much more than a set of tools for a factory floor. It's a mindset. You know, whether it's Kaizen's focus on continuous improvement, the logic of a pull system, or the simple discipline of FIFO, it all points to the same thing: a relentless, daily pursuit of a better, more efficient, and more valuable way of doing things. And that leaves us with a final thought, and it's for you. This stuff isn't just for manufacturing. Think about your own processes, how you handle your email inbox, your to-do list for a big project, or even just the food in your fridge. Where could this simple rule of first in, first out create more clarity, reduce waste, and establish a much better flow for you?